first female they hired in my department in Australia. I was a fresh-faced 21-year-old with no idea what I was getting myself into. I got a job as an operator on oil and gas rigs. I was sitting across the table from my boss, and he said to me, "Yassmin, is there any specialist equipment you need? Because you're a woman." And I was like, oh my God, this is the question I've been waiting for my entire life. Yes, I need pants with more space for my booty. You have no idea how hard it is to fit into men's pants, right? The long crotch, pancake ass. The struggle is real. My boss didn't quite understand the request. And so I ended up in men's pants. I adapted. I remember driving out to my first rig, and my colleague, Earl, looked at me with this real look of concern on his face. He was like, "Yassmin, I've never worked with a woman before." I'm like, here we go. He's like, "Are you going to be able to lift the tools?" "Oh, mate. You're a Filipino man half my size. I can lift you up." Earl never offered to help me again. And here's the thing, it was funny at the time, and on these experiences continued, right? Most of the time, I was the first female engineer any of these guys had worked with. And so they had no idea how to deal with me. One guy literally said, "I'm not sure if you will start to cry if I talk to you." And I thought, if every woman in your life is crying when you talk to her, you have issues. But I didn't ask them to change. I learned to adapt. I became one of the boys, right? I started to talk like them. I'd put a bit of swagger. I did my absolute best to be a middle-aged white dude, right? Because that's all the cues around me told me that that's how you needed to be in order to succeed, right? That's what I thought I needed to do. But here's the thing, it worked for me almost. Because it turns out that I wasn't a middle-aged white dude. No matter how hard I tried, I just ended up being a pretty dodgy fake version of one. And everyone around me noticed. And it manifested in really strange ways. These kind of gendered comments that would be passed off as jokes. The fact that no one would take any of my technical contributions seriously unless a male colleague repeated it. Or the fact that I would walk onto the rig and be deemed incompetent unless proven otherwise. Women in male-dominated industries have usually two main ways of coping, right? Either internal or external. Internal, meaning they either justify the behavior or they try to fit in. They change themselves to try to fit in. External is called impression management. You be so good, so professional, that they cannot do anything but take you seriously. Both of these are survival methods. They don't change the system. I tried both, right? Not only did I make excuses for the behavior and I tried my best to fit in, but I thought if I just worked so hard, did so well, maybe, just maybe, I would get away with it. Because that's what we're told as women, as migrants, as people of color, as Muslims, as anyone who does not fit the norm. Work hard. Fit in, don't make a fuss. That's the path to acceptance. That's the path to equality. Oh, and don't forget to be grateful for it. Unfortunately, that's not really how reality works. Because that acceptance, that equality, is completely conditional. Make one mistake, step even one toe out of line, and all of that acceptance, all of that equality will be taken away in an instant. How do I know? Well, I got a little too comfortable, you see. Like, I did well academically. I served my community. I played the part. I started a youth organization when I was 16 years old. I did mechanical engineering and graduated valedictorian with first-class honors. I traveled around the world representing my country. I was on federal advisory boards. I hosted a television show. I won awards. I was the Young Australian of the Year for my state. I published a book before I turned 25. I thought I was equal. That was my mistake. It all kind of started to unravel when I decided to have a disagreement with a federal politician.
Anybody that supports Sharia law in this country should be deported.
So do you know what Sharia law is?
Yes, but it does not have
Do you know what it is?
Me praying 5 Sharia laws?
Of course, me praying 5 times a day is Sharia.
Okay.
Like, okay, I'm not going to attack you personally.
What
But my frustration is that people talk about Islam without knowing anything about it, and they're willing to completely negate any of my rights as a human being, as a woman, as a person with agency, simply because they have an idea about what my faith is about.
Things really came to a head, though, when I decided to write a Facebook post of 7 words on Anzac Day, which is Australia's version of Memorial Day, asking for a little bit of empathy for other victims of war. And even though in less than an hour, I pulled it down and apologized, I was on the front page of national papers day in, day out. The Prime Minister commented. Parliamentarians said that I should be deported, that I should self-deport, that I was un-Australian, that I was a disgrace. I got death threats. I had radio commentators saying that they would like to run me over. Racist posters were put up around cities. I lost work. I had to move house. And when I eventually decided that I would leave the country, a national TV station ran a poll asking whether I should leave or stay to face my critics. And tens of thousands of people responded. Here's the thing. Outrage happens all the time, but this was no ordinary outrage. This didn't go for a day, or a week, or even a month. And this wasn't just social media, or mainstream media, or the government, or the public. This was over 130,000 words in hundreds of articles. And it went for 4 months, almost daily. This was no ordinary outrage. This was putting me in my place. This was me being made an example of. Don't you dare step out of line. A decade's worth of community work, well, you're just a Muslim. So what did I learn? That no amount of hard work is protection, because when a system is not designed to protect you, any acceptance is conditional. I was sold a fallacy that as a woman in a male-dominated industry, if I worked hard enough, if I acted like one of the boys, eventually I would outperform my identity and eventually I would be equal. I was sold a fallacy that an Australian Muslim woman like myself, if I worked hard enough, if I loved Australia enough, if I was grateful enough, eventually I would be given equality. Eventually, I would outperform my identity. I should not need to outperform my identity. And neither should you. Our identities are not the problem. The problem is the systems that are discriminatory. The problem is systems that do not treat us as equal. So what that means is structural change. But structural change is a big thing. So what do? I'm going to give you a couple of building blocks. The first is that if we agree and acknowledge that we are all parts of systems, then we must learn and understand these systems in order to be able to dismantle it. Right? We are not individuals operating in a vacuum. If there's one thing you do after tonight, it is go home and learn about how the patriarchy operates and how it's often internalized. Do the work and find out why people of color are still affected by colonization, or why our economic system actually serves to increase inequality rather than decrease it. Understand the systems that we operate in. Commit to doing the work. Number 2 is listen to the experiences of others without denying their legitimacy. If a person of color tells you, you know what, I had this racist experience, and your first thought is to think, they're probably imagining it, hold up. Why don't you believe them? You denying their experience is you exerting power, and that's how the system operates. Put your ego aside and listen. And number 3, which is the most challenging but perhaps the most transformative, is to learn to create alternatives, offer options outside those unwritten rules. Think collectively rather than individually. Next time you want to start a company, consider making it a cooperative where everyone gets an equal share. Think about how you split your household chores. Hire a diverse cohort, not a diverse candidate. Right? Because a brown Muslim woman is not diverse. She's just brown. No one should ever need to earn the right to be equal. And if we want that to be true, then all of us need to be a part of making that happen. Structural change sounds difficult, but structures are made up of people like me and you, right? And I believe that they can be undone by people like me and you. No one should need to work for their equality. So let's all of us work to make that true.